In this video. On this video, I'm going to talk about how you can maximize results from Minoxidil. And for you guys who are on the channel for the first time, my name is Alex, and I'm previously hair loss sufferer who was able to regrow back my own hair, and I'm also a certified trichologist. So in today's video, I want to focus on Minoxidil and what you can do basically to understand how you can make it more effective to stimulate hair regrowth. And I'm personally a long-term user of Minoxidil. I have been applying Minoxidil on my scalp almost continuously since 2013. So it's more than 10 years now of Minoxidil application. I started at the beginning of the year, 2013. And there has been times when I have basically skipped Minoxidil for longer time periods. There has been times when I have cycled it. And there also has been times when I have reduced application amount, for example. Like I don't apply as much anymore as I did in the beginning of the treatment because, again, I don't need to recover the areas that already have filled in. And when it comes to the Minoxidil, like there is a specific timeline you need to be aware of regarding Minoxidil. And the first thing is that is also kind of often concern is a hair shed from Minoxidil. And that shed can occur for around 6 weeks when you start with Minoxidil. And that shed is also something that you can reduce if you are able to strengthen your hair cycle before you start with Minoxidil. That is basically one of the things I often do for enrollment to my program, is that I address the hair cycle, I strengthen the hair itself, and make sure the follicles are strong before we start with growth stimulation such as Minoxidil. Because what will happen is that, for example, if there are underlying problems on the scalp, such as dermatitis, inflammation, or the hair cycle itself is not strong, Minoxidil as growth stimulant, it will cause hair shedding, and that will be a problem. So we want to have a strong hair cycle, and we want to be sure that there is no underlying problems before we start with Minoxidil application. And when it comes to Minoxidil, for example, if the shed continues past 6 weeks, that's usually a red flag, and that means that there is something wrong. And that this is either, for example, it can be dermatitis, it can be inflammation on the scalp, but it can also be internal factors. And even if you, for example, have a, let's say, high DHT sensitivity or genetic hair loss, and you're not addressing DHT angle, Minoxidil, especially if you're using, for example, plain formulations such as Rogaine or Kirkland, it won't work, and it likely will just aggregate the shed you're having. So make sure that you do address underlying problems first before you actually start with Minoxidil. And if the shed continues past 6 weeks, that is a red flag and means that you are doing something wrong. There is some kind of error in the treatment you are having. And when it comes to also the timeline itself to see results from Minoxidil, usually it takes, for example, if you are in your early 20s and your hair loss has been going on for, let's say, 1 year, 2, 3 years, then you can see first results from Minoxidil application after around 10 to 12 weeks mark. And sometimes if the hair loss has been advanced, let's say one is in early 30s, for example, with more advanced hair loss, then it can take much longer to actually see first results from Minoxidil. In my case, I would say it did take for me around 4 or 5 months before I started to notice the hair are recovering. And the way I did notice it is that my hair started to become kind of fuller and it was easier to style them. Back then I didn't know quite what I need to look for, but for me it was around 4 to 5 months mark that I actually noticed that there was some kind of difference regarding my hair situation. So this is also important to understand because you don't want to give up Minoxidil earlier on, right? You want to be sure that you stick to it and committed to it and keep applying it to see actually more and more results. And of course, if there is no underlying problems going on internally or externally, you will see more and more results as time goes by. And usually to reach the peak results from Minoxidil itself, it usually takes around 15 to 24 months. Sometimes earlier, if your hair loss has been starting just recently and your follicles are still active, then one can see also basically peak results already after 12 months, right? It is fully possible. But on average, I would say around 15 months is a timeline for Minoxidil. And when it comes to Minoxidil itself as well, like you have to be sure that you don't have any underlying problems in your scalp itself. Like, for example, there cannot be any buildups, let's say even from Minoxidil itself, because it can leave residue on the scalp. But you also want to be sure that there is no excessive sebum, no excessive scalp oil, and also there is no dermatitis, for example, or inflammatory problems or microinflammatory problems that could cause and affect Minoxidil effectiveness. Right? So you have to have the clean scalp. You have to be sure that the underlying problems on the scalp itself is solved before you start with Minoxidil. Because again, it will help you to stack the odds in your favor to actually see results from Minoxidil application. And you also want to be sure that you are addressing, for example, DHT angle, right? If your hair loss is caused by DHT sensitivity and have, for example, genetical factors involved as well, you have to be sure that DHT is addressed, right? It has to be look into before you start with minoxidil, because minoxidil, as I said previously, like if it is a standard formulation, like a plain Rogaine or Kirkland, it's not going to block DHT. And from my experience, I have seen that there is some who talk about that minoxidil has effect on DHT. From my experience, it doesn't have it, right? So it's minoxidil is just a growth stimulant, and if you are having DHT things that needs to be addressed, it won't work. And basically what happens is that if you apply minoxidil, the hair shed will basically continue, and progression will also continue, and you won't be able to see result from minoxidil. Maybe in form of some values here, but it will never go past that stage. So, for example, DHT has to be addressed. And if there are other factors, such as nutritional factors, for example, deficiencies, it is also something that can affect minoxidil and make it less effective. And for example, if you also have, for example, problems with a gut or gut biome, it is also something that can affect minoxidil indirectly, right? Because it will affect the hair cycle, make hair cycle weaker, and that again will make minoxidil basically to not have the effect you're looking for. And to see results from minoxidil itself, usually, like I said, it takes around as early as 10 to 12 weeks, but sometimes it can take, let's say, up to 16 and even more weeks before one can see results from it. And if there is no results from minoxidil application, then what one can do is one can start with microneedling before applying minoxidil, like basically just a light microneedling without pressure on the scalp before application of minoxidil. And the reason I know that this is a very effective way to approach and make minoxidil more effective is that when I first started with minoxidil, I was doing microneedling on my temples and hairline. And I didn't do any microneedling on the vertex or crown area. And what happened is that my hair started recovering in the temples hairline, but I had no results from minoxidil in my crown area, like there was zero results. And when I started with microneedling on my crown area as well, I started to notice that the hair are coming back there as well. So microneedling can be an effective way to make minoxidil more effective. And plain minoxidil by itself, let's say for example there is no underlying problems, can work for around 20 to 30% of the guys. They can get good results with just applying plain minoxidil, especially if they are quite young, in early 20s for example. But from my experience and also what I have seen over the years for the guys who reach out to me and basically enroll into my program, is that adding microneedling can make a huge difference. And other thing is that if you have added microneedling and you have done this approach for several months, let's say you have done microneedling for 4 months and you still don't see results, then it is possible to add something else, and it is Tretinoin cream that can help you to basically reactivate the follicles and make minoxidil more effective. And Tretinoin is something that can only be applied if the scalp is healthy, right? The scalp has to be healthy before one actually applies Tretinoin, because retinoic acid is quite intense for the skin, right? And what will happen is that if there is, for example, dermatitis, inflammation on the scalp, it will basically aggregate those conditions and make things worse, and also likely cause additional shed. So if you do consider adding Tretinoin, you have to be sure that the scalp is in the right environment for it. So this is also important. And when it comes to Tretinoin, there are different strengths of it. And usually one starts with a low strength and then builds it up to, for example, starts with 0.0425 or 0.05 and then builds it up to 0.1% if it is basically kind of tolerated from the scalp environment. And when it comes to minoxidil, it is something that from my experience will always work, right? It only stops working if there is some kind of underlying problems that makes it less effective. And as I said earlier in the beginning of the video, I have been applying minoxidil myself for more than 10 years, right? And each time I have some kind of setback, either that I do something wrong in the treatment or something happens, for example, regarding my stress levels, sleep patterns, or let's say I have some microinflammatory problems in my scalp that suddenly spikes up, or higher DHT sensitivity. What happens is that my hair sheds, but when I address that problem regarding shed, I'm able to recover my hair with minoxidil application. And for you guys who wonder about what strength of minoxidil I use a regular 5% strength. I never have tried the stronger one because I don't see need for it. And I also use just a plain minoxidil formulation such as Rogaine. And the thing with minoxidil is that you don't have to have an advanced formulation for it. Like a plain minoxidil will work just fine, but you have to be sure that there is no underlying problems in your scalp itself, that internal factors is addressed and solved, and that basically you are doing things correctly regarding buildups, regarding your scalp care, regarding your hair care, and also basically anything else that could affect and make treatment less effective. So this is something that I want to share in today's video for you guys, because it is important to understand that multiple things can have a huge impact on how effective actually growth stimulation can be for you. Because if you do some kind of mistake in the treatment, it can have an impact and make that you are not able to see results from, for example, growth stimulants such as minoxidil. And for you guys who are struggling with the hair loss or you're not seeing results from treatment, you can schedule a call below this video. There's a link for it. And reach out to me and see basically what could be holding you back, what needs to be addressed, and we can strategize together how you can solve your hair loss problem once and for all. Thanks for watching, see you guys, and see you next one. Cheers.